Right, welcome everyone to this month or this year's spiritual questions answered with CordyKet. My name is Kat, K-E-T Kat of CordyKet. I'm the co-founder of CordyKet together with my wife. My wife's name is Cordelia. My name is Kat. So together we are known as CordyKet. And just a little bit of introduction for those of you who are new here before we carry on with the talk. So some of you will be wondering what is our background, what makes us the authority, right? Or what makes us qualified to share about today's topic, which is divine beings. All right. So just to share with you all the work that we do for the past 11 or 12 years since 2010. My wife and I, Cordelia and I, have been teaching and providing services that are mostly related to subtle energies and spirituality. So we do a lot of energy healing, energy reading, and quite a fair bit of our work that we do is linked to spiritual cases. We help a lot of people who have spiritual emergencies, right? So what do I mean by spiritual emergencies? So typically there would be instances or events like being disturbed by evil spirits, black magic, and so on and so forth, right? So we help people who deal with all these things, and not only that, we also teach, right, and guide people how to do the kind of work that we do. So energy healing, energy reading. So we have a energy healing modality that we call infinity healing, whereby we teach people how to do the kind of work that we do. And for those people who are up to it, right, they can do also what we call light work, which is dealing with all the evil spirits and dark forces that, dark spiritual forces that are present in the world. We also have our very own Qigong called Unity Qigong, right? And we have quite a number of meditations which are proprietary to our practice, like meditation. All right. So most of you are regulars. I see most of you are regulars, and no doubt you might have heard of my previous talks on spiritual questions answered. So the past few talks were on topic like ghosts, and we followed up by a talk on hell. What's hell like? And last month in December 2020, the talk was on heaven. So tonight, the topic is on divine beings. All right. So in case you all would like to ask any questions about the topic, right, about divine beings, please feel free to use the chat function to type your question there, and everyone will be able to read your question. If you would like to ask questions, right, as in to speak, you can unmute yourself and speak one by one, bearing in mind that this session is recorded and the speaker will be recorded. All right. So any questions, please feel free to type in the chat, and I will take a look at the questions, and I will see whether I can answer your questions, your queries with regards to this topic, divine beings. While you all are typing your questions, or if you all have any, I will be sharing with you all, right, what are our experiences about the divine beings, right? So already there's a question from Edwin: who are the divine beings? Where do they stay? All right. So I shall go directly into divine beings. All right. So we have covered some of the things that we have covered previously. We covered ghosts, right? We talked about ghosts, and I believe in the talk we also talked a little bit about demons, and all this we talk about the realm of under the realm of hell or other hells, right? And of course, their main home will be held. They also share the same space as us. They can come into the same space. So we have ghosts and demons, right? And last month, December 2020, we talked about heaven, right? If it's the talk is actually recorded and posted on YouTube. So just go to YouTube and search for CordyKet, and you should be able to find the talk, right? So far there is one on ghosts, one on hell, and one on heaven that's uploaded, and another talk that I didn't record. All right. So now, no doubt, a lot of people have experienced ghosts. Now, I don't know what it's like for you all, but I used to be a normal person. All right. So I started this work in 2010. So before this, I used to be a very normal person. All right. So my background is engineering. Right. I'm a very logical and practical person, and I used to have had experiences of ghosts when I was younger, and quite a number of times, right? And the thing is this, but I have never experienced divine beings until I was on the spiritual path, right? And I had my spiritual awakening roughly in 2009 and 20, roughly about 2009, and by 2010 I was um, helping people, right? And in late 2010, I met Cordelia. So when I met Cordelia, Cordelia was already way more advanced than I am. And Cordelia already had many, many experiences. Okay, so I'm just sharing with you all my story. So when I met Cordelia in late 2010, it was at a crystal warehouse, I remember. And Cordelia is not, she's not an ordinary person, right? So I can still remember the encounter, right? And so Cordelia is someone who was very spiritually awakened by the time I encountered her in late 2010. And she could really communicate with spirits, right? And back then I was just a total newbie. So I got acquainted with Cordelia, and soon I began to know her story. Now, Cordelia's story is no ordinary story because Cordelia too used to be a normal person. She had a spiritual awakening, a very huge Kundalini combustion, right? She received a huge Kundalini combustion in 2008, and her psychic and energy senses were awakened. And so, from a normal person who could not experience the spiritual world or spirits, became someone who could see, who could feel, who could hear. Um, Her senses were very heightened. And that eventually led her to being possessed by ghosts and demons. All right. And she was also eventually a black magic by a spiritual teacher, no less. All right. So, and that is not all. The main thing is after getting to know Cordelia, I eventually became her student, right? I got to know her, and her story was very amazing. Now, if you all would like to know the story, she actually wrote a book. All right, the book is called Possessed from Darkness to Light. It's available on Amazon, so you can search Possessed by Cordelia Lee, right? Cordelia Lee. So now, the reason why I joined Cordelia was of her amazing stories of her experiences with divine beings. Now, so here, I don't know about you all. So I think some people would have had experiences with spirits or ghosts or, the evil ones, the nasty ones. So if you were to ask your friends, right, or based on your friends and your circle, social circle, I would say the likelihood is there are way more people who have experienced negative entities, ghosts, or the nasty stuff, than people who have actually experienced the good guys, the divine beings, like whichever religion you come from, right? It was the same for me, right? So I had experiences being disturbed by ghosts or evil spirits since I was young, a number of experiences. But I've never really experienced a divine being or, those that are from heaven, those are the good guys. At least not that I know of, right? So experiences with divine beings seems to be way more uncommon. And if you were to talk to people who can see ghosts, take note, it would seem that many people who can see ghosts, most of them don't see or cannot see the divine. And it kind of, there are kind of question marks. I don't know whether you have questions like that. All right. So these are the kind of questions that went through my head. And when I encountered Cordelia had the most amazing stories. Right now, so she was possessed by a demon, and in fact, there were instances by more than one evil spirit, and she encountered many um, spirits, both of the dark and of the light. Now, I was quite intrigued by the fact that she encountered divine beings, the good guys. Kind of spoiler alert for the book. So she actually encountered Jesus, angels, the Buddhas, and quite a few other deities. We are, for those of you who don't know, we are based in Malaysia, right? Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So it's a multicultural, multi-faith, multi-religious society here, right? So we are quite exposed to different religions and faiths. So Cordelia had all these experiences, and not just of um, these Buddhas and Jesus. She had a meeting with God, right? She experienced God, and I was most intrigued by her experience of God because um, I don't know any other person who had a definitive, confirmed experience of God, and that was why I was, I was searching, right, for a spiritual path, and I joined Cordelia. So, um, experience with divine beings are not very common, right? Now, so what are actually divine beings? So I will just cut to the chase and try to share with you all about the divine beings, because uh, when we started, we talked about ghosts and hell and heaven. So those of you who missed the talk on heaven, please go to YouTube and look up CordyKet and try to find the talk on heaven if you've not heard about heaven, so that you fill in the gaps. Now, I will just be very clear. Divine beings come from heaven, right? So in the talk on heaven, we cover about the experience of heaven. Now, there are many spirits out there, all right? And I tend to tell people this. We do not classify the spirits the same way as maybe most traditionalists do. We try to stick to classifications that that can help us do our work, right? So yes, we do use classification as demon and so on and so forth, but we do have our own um, slightly technical definitions for each kind. So to be clear, divine comes from heaven. So ghosts, if you all attended the talk on ghosts, is essentially lost souls, right? It's essentially lost souls. And we talk about demons, which actually are a progression, typically from ghosts. Okay, so divine beings, they actually come from heaven. And we want to make this very clear. Now, if you are very experienced in spirituality or you're into a lot of spiritual circles, no doubt you will hear about people encountering different kinds of spirits and entities, and different people channeling different entities and so on and so forth, right? So for us, we are very particular that when we work with any entities, we only work with divine beings because divine beings come from heaven, right? And heaven is the home of our soul, is the home of light, is the abode of the true source of light. All right, for um, the common term will be God, right? The true source of light, the home of true source of light is called heaven, and the beings, the spirits that live in heaven. Now, they are divine beings, so they all come from heaven. This is the very important distinction. All right, the fact of where they come from, we call them divine. So for Cordelia and I, and whoever who learn infinity, we have quite a strict definition. So you can have, if we were to split the spirits into a very simple classification, we classify them as, are they divine or non-divine? Essentially, is, do they come from heaven or do they not come from heaven? We make this very clear distinction because the moment they are not from heaven, right? We don't work with them because most of them, their values, their loyalties are very suspect, and they may be very self-serving, or most of them are very self-serving. And of course, you have all the evil spirits, which are definitely evil. But there are some that they don't come from hells or hell or whatever, but they may also have intentions that are more self-serving than for good. So when we talk about divine beings, a few characteristics. So one thing is the origin is they come from heaven. The other is they are defined. The actions have to be in accordance to good values. So I wrote here values. So they have to be of good values. Meaning they have to be loving and compassionate. So this is very important, right? Because in our work, we have encountered many people who are able to connect with spirits, and they even pray to spirits, but without knowing whether are they praying or connecting to spirits that are good or bad. Now, if you actually connect to a divine being who is from heaven, immediately, all right, you would know, okay, or a divine being is a good spirit. Why? Because they are bound by values, and this is where you see the distinction. So, just to share with you all, right? For example, there are different spirits, different deities that are out there. Now, not all deities are divine, right? Now, I want to distinct the term divine beings from the term deity. So, okay, I shouldn't write it here. I should write the term deity here in the middle, right? A deity is like a spirit that's powerful enough for people to pray to, right? You pray to a deity. Now, the deity can belong to the bad side, hell, or it can hell or hells or wherever they are, and also it can be a divine deity. But the thing is, how do you know whether the deity is divine, comes from heaven, or it could be one that has its own hell, right? Those of you who attended my talk on hell, you know that very powerful beings, right? They can create their own hells, right? A non-divine deity could very well create his own hell. So how can we tell whether the deity is divine or not divine? So one thing is, does it live according to good values? Does it um, does the practices involved with the prayers and so on and so forth, are they linked to good values? Right? So let me give an example. So if you talk about like Jesus, Mother Mary, Guan Yin, the Buddha, when you talk about all these famous divine deities, right, you will notice they all talk about being good people, about good values, right? Mother Mary, Jesus, Guan Yin, is all about love and peace. Even Buddha, and Buddha is very famous for wisdom, right? Bringing about peace, solving people's problems, putting an end to suffering. That is Buddha. Right, you have those of you who are Taoists or Buddhists, you would have heard of Guan Gong, right? Guan Gong or Guan Yu. So he is famous for honor and integrity. Again, a good value, right? And you can talk about angels. Again, angels are from heaven, and a lot of the angels are about helping people, right? About courage, about love, even it can be also to bring positive things, right? Like the arts, music. So all these things, it has to be when you're divine, it has to be linked to things that are good values, about making people better. All right. Now, this is where I would like to point out to people, how can you tell that maybe some deities are not divine, right? So the differentiating point is values. For example, I don't know where you all come from. I mean, I know where you all come from, sorry. I don't know what are your experience. In Malaysia, it's a multicultural, multi-faith society. So a lot of people pray to different things. Now, one common practice is for some people to anyhow pray to spirits and or deities and for um, ask to strike lottery. Right? You all know lottery? To strike lottery. In Malaysia, a lot of people like to buy numbers, what we call 4D. Buy 4 digits, and every week, the winning numbers are announced and people hope to win some. It's something like a number forecast gambling, all right? So, or there are certain deities again, that people like to pray for getting rich, becoming rich and famous. Now, this is where I would like to point out to you all. Now, if you have any deities, right? No, doesn't matter their name, okay? Because the thing is this, they can be called by any name. They can be called a saint. They can be called a Buddha. But how do you know, right? For normal people, you cannot even experience the divine. You cannot even experience the spirit. You won't know whether they are good or bad. But you can differentiate from the values. Now, if the deity is always talking about money, about getting rich fast, this is where you should straight away, right? You should have an exclamation mark. Getting rich quick, striking lottery, any deities that are of this type, you should, your warning radar should start to sound. Why? Think about this. Any deity that helps people strike lottery, win by gambling, get rich quick. Now think about it. If you get money quick, or think about other people, don't say you, my bad. Okay? Think about the people who strike lottery. What normally happens to them? One question. Do they become better people? About it, do they really become better people? most of the stories about people who win lotteries, right, who strike it rich suddenly, not by effort, all right, like a windfall. Huh? Most of them end up using all their winnings, losing all their winnings very fast. Yes, they lose their winnings or they spend all the money and that was it. This is what most of the stories are about for people who strike it rich. So if people tend, if the a deity were to reward a person with this type of get rich quick manner, don't you think the person will become two things? All right. So I'll point out, if you're talking about getting rich quick, what are the two values, right, that the people who request such or who are, who are normally praying for such, what are the kind of values that they have? It's two values. Number one, can you read the board? Lazy. Am I not right? They're too lazy to work for money. Number two, greed is one of the values. So, if a deity were to reward whoever, their follower by helping them to get rich quick, they would be encouraging the person to become lazy and greedy. They will be encouraging, right, the values of being lazy and greedy. So my question to you is, do you think such deities fall under the category of divine? No. All right. So divine, they must have good values. Okay, and they must promote good values. So this is one of the ways that we can tell for normal people. Right? For us or people who are training under Infinity program, right? We teach them other ways. So the other ways that normally we will teach them is to differentiate by light. Right? So divine beings, they need their energies, their invisible energies, need to be mostly of light. I would say at least 90% of light. Right? So those of you who are wondering what is this light, so it's an invisible light, right? So they have to be of light. Now, being of light is not enough. The important thing is of values, because, all right, just to be clear, there are spirits out there that look like light. That for most practical purposes are of light, but they are not divine because their values are something wrong. They do not live by good values. They're self-serving, but they are able to get their energies to become light. All right. So that is why the first and most important thing that I put under divine beings is they must be of good values, of light, and of course, the number one criteria is they are of heaven. Now, the other thing that would define divine is they are bound by rules or ethics. This is, of course, very much linked to values, right? So, for example, divine beings are not allowed to take energy from the people who pray to them. All right. So I think I did mention like ghosts and demons. They are interested in taking energy from us, but the divine, no, because they are bound by values, because of where they come from, and they have these rules. They cannot take our energy. They are very different. So to use back the analogy that I have used previously, So if we were to think of the spirit world is not too different from the human world. All right. In the human world, the currency is money. Everyone wants money. Yes. I mean, generally speaking, right? Everyone wants money. So the currency that people want that is in high demand is something called money. All right. So the good guys, what do good guys do? So good guys, honest people, we work for money. All right. And what do the bad guys do? Right? The bad guys, they rob, they steal, they cheat, they con people. Those are the bad guys. Right? Now, in the spirit world, the currency is energy. All right? Because the spirits are all made of energy. Invisible, they're all invisible, they're all energy forms. Right? It's just that they are of different types of energy. Now, guys are the bad guys in the spirit world are similar to bad guys in human world. Right? The only thing is they want energy. So they will rob, they will steal, they will try to cheat people of their energy. That is what they do. Right? So it is very similar in that sense, right? Different currency, but the actions of whether it's an evil spirit or evil person or bad spirit or bad person is pretty much the same. Now, what about the good guys, right? So the good guys in the spirit world, for example, the divine beings, they can generate their own positive energy or they work for it, right? So they cannot take, they don't steal, they don't rob. So this is one of the ways, right, of classifying and defining are they divine or not. So they follow all this. All right. So the divine beings, now to be clear, divine beings, as long as they have this criteria, they are all divine already. And this is just to keep it simple. And notice that I never talk about religion, right? Because you have divine beings of different religions. All right. The only thing is, with every religion, we all have to be very careful because every religion there are cults. In the cults, they may have deities that are turned out to be on the dark side, right? So they may be lumped under, like they can be Christianity, but they will be Christian cults, which may be deviant. It's the same for every religion, right? So whatever you pray to, you have to be careful. And how do we define them? One, they must be from heaven. Two, they must be in accordance to good values. Three, they must be primarily of light, at least 90%. Right? But for normal people, you won't be able to differentiate. For us, those of us who are learning energy, right, in infinity healing, we will train, right? And they follow rules, and the rules clearly define what they can and cannot do. All right. Basically, the rules are all in accordance to good values, right? So the good values will be about that. So think about it. So the moment there is a deity that promotes get rich quick, right? That means it's trying to promote negative values like being lazy and greedy. So it is no longer divine. All right. So now we'll take a look at all the questions and try to answer. So if you have more questions, please feel free to type. Give me a moment while I look through the history of all the questions. Quite a number of questions. Jenny asked, what is divine intervention? Okay, so very simple. So divine intervention is intervention by divine being. All right. So of course, a lot of people will use it in a context whereby it's something that we cannot help ourselves and something very powerful, obviously good, right? And we call it divine intervention. So can divine being interfere with karma of heaven? All right. So that is Edwin's question. That's a very good question. Now, so there are rules in place, and especially when it comes to karma, right? So when it comes to karma, maybe we can have a separate talk about karma. All right. Now, basically, when it comes to karma, the divine being should not intervene, or should not intervene unless certain conditions are met. All right. So Evan used the term interfere. Now, I do not see it that way. Now, for example, how can divine beings intervene in the terms of karma? Now, in the kind of work that we do some karma work, although we don't talk much about it. Right, we do help people resolve their past life karma, and for example, some because we do a lot of spiritual cases, so some people have problems that are linked to their past life karma, right? Or it may not necessarily be past life karma; it can even be a present life karma, right? So, for example, I remember one of the very first cases, right? One of the very first cases I encountered was very early in my career, right? Before I think, I'm not sure whether I've met Kabir then, but I think I've met, right? So I had a client, right? And he had some, I can't remember the exact thing because it's a very old client. I think one of you will remember him, right? So he's by the surname Ng. Uh, so what happened was he had a fungal nail, fungal nail of growth, and you know, um, it was traced. I helped him determine, you know, and no matter what he did, right, the fungus didn't go away, you know, toenail or something like that. I can't remember. So and so he came to seek me for, you know, ask me for a reason. Why wouldn't it go away? And I read the toenail, and it was linked to a present life karma. I think he tortured some insects or animals when he was young or something like that. And so I helped him, right? I helped him resolve karma with all the animals that were tortured or something like that. It's something along that lines. And to help him do this, like I can't do this totally on my own. I had to call for the presence of divine beings, right? And what he did was, for example, he tortured animals, and the animals are, you know, they die, they suffer a lot, and stuff. You know, they have spirits, right? And I act as an intermediary. This kind of work that we do. So whether it's this guy or we have a number of, for example, clients, right? This is what we do. They come to us with a problem that is linked to karma, whether it's this life or past life, and we try to help them resolve. So it could be past life karma, you did something bad, you kill a person, right? Or you injure people, and sometimes past karma will manifest in your present life problems, right? So we will help the person to find out what was the thing that happened. Now, first of all, we have to determine, is it actually karma? We find out the reason. And if we find out that it's a past life karma, we will help the person to resolve the karma with all parties involved. Now, so most of the people who suffered, most of them become ghosts, right? Lost souls. And lost souls are those souls who are lost and couldn't go back to light, couldn't go back to heaven, right? So we help them get in touch with all the spirits through the person, right? We help them get in touch with the spirits. The person help us, we help them, and we help send the souls, right? The spirits, right, who are lost souls and so on. We send them back to heaven. Right? This is the work that we do. We send back to heaven. Now, because this person helped to resolve the karma and helped to send all these poor souls who were lost, but uh, it's true they caused them to become lost souls, and by torturing or stuff. But now they have done something in repentance and to make up for it. So we will call upon the divine beings, and the divine beings will be the judge, and they will determine how much of the karma that this person who owes um, these these spirits or these dead people or so on, right, to reduce the karma. So in this sense, the divine can interfere or can intervene. But normally the divine will not intervene because there is a reason why we are born on earth, right? And one of the most important reasons is to repay back our karma. So they do not intervene unnecessarily. They are bound by rules. All right. I hope um, that is that answers Edwin's question. So Ernest asking, what's the most effective way to call on a divine being? So in general, the most effective way to, or the most common way, is to pray, right? To pray to whichever way. Now, I would recommend, it all depends on your religions. If you have a religion whereby there are mantras, right? Please use the mantras that are associated with the divine being you want to call. We chant the mantras for some time, and where possible, you chant it out loud. When you chant it out loud, you verbalize it, and then you chant it enough times. For those who are in Hinduism, Buddhism, right? You have a prayer beat, right? A mala beat. You chant at least one mala. I would recommend a few malas, right? So if you really, now everything depends on the situation. If you're in a spiritual emergency, you're being disturbed by evil spirits. I always try to tell people, look, everybody knows that if you pray or you hold the Bible or you go to church, you can try and call the divine to intervene, right, with your situation. But the evil spirits on the dark side, they have the ways to deal with it. So sometimes prayers is not enough. So going to a place of worship that is good, that's probably connected, or group prayer, right? Group prayer, group mantra chanting is more powerful than you doing it alone, right? If you're in trouble. Okay, so if you're a Christian, even Christian, you have select verses, right? So for Christianity, there's a Lord's Prayer, for example. Right? So every religion has, typically a prayer or a mantra. You do enough of the prayers, then only you connect and request help. If your situation is very serious, bear in mind that the dark side, they have the ways of dealing with people with praise. They have the ways. Now, next question: what are the benefits of being spiritual? Does spiritual affect health? Meaning of divine being and spiritual life. So, Jenny, this is a bit off topic, so I will not be answering this question if you don't mind. But now just to link it to the topic of divine being, some of the divine beings, right, or I would say most of the divine beings, they are actually historical people, right? Jesus was someone who lived 2,000 over years ago, right? You have Kuan Yin, you have Shakyamuni Buddha. Shakyamuni Buddha is almost 2,600 years ago, right? So all these were real people. So, and these real people, they were very spiritual and they live according to good values. They were good people, they help a lot of people. And when they die, humans will pray to them, or somehow, whatever it is, the decision will be made in heaven by authorities in heaven. Okay, and they can end up being divine. So, becoming a divine being when they are, when you're gone. So if you ask about being spiritual, yeah, you might end up being a divine. Now, just a simple answer for Jenny, what's the benefits of being spiritual? The benefits is for yourself. If you're a spiritual person, typically you'll be a happier person, right? I don't know about you, but I speak from my own experience. I find that after I've been on the spiritual path, I'm a very, very different person. I'm just very different, right? But different in a very good sense, okay? And I would not change it for any other thing, right? Those of you who know me, right? If you know me personally, you will know that I'm not rich, right? Like all these sessions, they are free on donation basis, and most people don't donate anyway, right? Of course, some of you do, and we're very thankful for that. So you will know that I'm not rich. I drive a very old second-hand car. I live in a rented house, a very normal rented house. But I'm very happy with the work that I do with my life and with how I feel and how I react to situations in life. Again, if you know me personally, you will know that my life is not smooth sailing, right? There are many challenges in my life. And yet I find that I'm able to face the challenges that I have in life. I would say uh, I wouldn't be able to do it if I have not gone down the path of spirituality. I would be a very bitter, angry, or depressed person if I don't know the things that I do now. All right, if I am not on this path of spirituality. Okay, so does it affect health in general? Spirituality should bring you more and more better health, mental health, physical health too. All right, so I've been asked, did I say Kundalini combustion? Yes, that was what happened to Cordelia, right? Jenny is asking, is there really God? Yes, right? So, Jenny, I believe you bought the book by Cordelia. So there are some encounters. Cordelia encountered God. And if you're very sensitive to energies, you can even feel the atmosphere when Cordelia encountered God as we read the book. And I remember when I first heard the story of Cordelia encountering God, um, it was a very special thing, and I can even feel the energies of the moment when she speaks about God, right? So um, Eileen is asking, how do we know if it's divine or not imposter demons entities pretending to be divine? So for those of you, so how to differentiate whether it's really divine or it's a imposter or pretender, right? Like I was sharing with you all, a lot of entities, they can appear as light beings, but they don't live according to good values and they don't follow rules and ethics. And they may even be out to steal your energy, to take energy from you, right? And it's not always possible to differentiate. So this is why I have this talk. I try to point out to you they need to be of good values, right? They really need to be of good values. And here I will try to add another example. All right. Now there are a lot of beings out there that are pretending to be divine, pretending to be good, and they look like light beings because for the clairvoyance, the people who can see invisible stuff, they can see them coming as light. But that is not good enough, because we have encounters with so-called negative entities that are of light. But we find, for example, their values are not good because they do not empower. All right. I will put a very important point here. Empower. One of the values is to empower. I hope you all understand what's the meaning of empower. Now, most of the divine will want to empower. It means they want you to become a better person. They want you to become stronger by yourself. They want you to be able to do things by yourself, and they want you to not be dependent on them. All right, not be dependent. Okay, so some of the ladies on this side, right? So see, if they give you money, they're actually not empowering you. They're making you become dependent on them, always praying and so on and so forth. So if there's any deities that keep on they come to you even though of light, but for example, they could be telling you very fascinating stories, and get you to become um, more and more dependent on them for answers. That is not empowerment, right? If you have an entity that appears to be of light, but keep on doing things such that wants you to get answers from it, that is not empowering. That is making you become dependent. So that is also another danger sign. All right. So for normal people, I would say watch out for the values. If you are an energy sensitive, you need to use all your senses in energies. And for us, we do teach people under infinity healing, in the infinity program, how to differentiate. But it is not easy, right? It involves a lot of training. It involves meditation and familiarization with what are good energies and what are negative energies. All right, that was a very good question. So, Ernest asked a very good question. Who is the most powerful divine being? Very good question. Um, for lack of better term, God. I think the answer is very simple. So now, just on the topic of God, we can have another talk. All right. So there will be many questions about God, and I'm not going to address it here because it will have to be done on a separate talk. But to answer your question, who's the most powerful divine being? Is God. Now, those of you who've been with us recently, right, you would know that there's another description of God, right? God is just a human common label, right? To us, it is more of the true source of light, all right? True source of light. Now, you can also go back to the talk to cover a bit of this, all right? So for the next question, can divine being and deity increase their size as compared to human size at will? Yes, size doesn't matter. For us, when we're in this field, it's not about the size. The size is just it can be illusion. It can just be, and they're made of energy. So energy can be complex. It can be dense, right? It's like gas. Right? Imagine like gas. Gas can be dense, or it can be, very light gas. That means very few particles. Gas can fill out a liquid. Gas can fill out the entire room, but the concentration will be very low. So for us, when it comes to divine and all this, we're not so concerned about magnitude of energy or whatever. So we're more concerned with how much of light are they, how is their values, are they uh, enough of love and so on and so forth. This is what we're concerned. Size is not important, right? It really, size doesn't matter. So Abby is asking, are Guan Yin and Guan Gong considered as divine beings? Yes, both of them are divine. How the divine being taking up to 90% of light, what practice they perform? All right. Now it's very simple. Our energies are dependent on who we are, right? In general, okay. In general, our energy. So it will be the same for the spirit world, right? Who you are will affect your energy as a person. Similarly, for the spirits, who they are will affect their energy. So if they are good people with good values, their energy will be more of light, will be of right, will be of brilliance, bright, right? Will be of light. Now the problem is this. So energy is kind of like money, right? So in the spirit world, some spirits they can take light from people, right? So spirits, I did say, right, the bad guys, the currency is money, is energy. So they take energy from people. So they can take people's light, right? And they themselves look brighter and brighter and brighter. So they can be of light, but the light does not belong to them. The light is not because they are of good values and because of they are good spirit. It's just because they are they have taken the light from elsewhere. All right. So the main thing is the character, the values. Never forget that. So that's why I put on the first thing that define divine values, good values. All right. So Eli is asking why 90% is considered divine. Now, 90% is just an arbitrary figure. All right. Arbitrary figure. So I'm just trying to say that they are mostly of like a vast majority of light. I'm not saying like 51% light and then you consider divine. No. Now, so they need to be mostly of light and of good values, and they must come from heaven. Now, must come from heaven is by default. If the moment they don't come from heaven, right, then they are not divine anymore. The number one, right, the number one criteria is here. Must be from heaven. All right, must be from heaven. This is the first criteria. And because there are still good spirits, they don't come from heaven, they are good values of light and all this, right? But they are not from heaven, and we don't consider them as divine, right? So the defining quality is must come from heaven, and after that we talk about values and so on and so forth. Because now this is very important because the moment they come from heaven, right, they have rules and ethics because they come from heaven, right? So when they don't come from heaven, it can be good guy and everything, but it can still be self-serving, right? They still can be self-serving. So for us, we just want to be of, or we just want to work with divine being. All right. So let's see. Next question. Xiaofan is asking, is it possible that someone on earth, their primary soul is a divine being? Yes. Noni is asking, can planetary and cosmic energy be considered divine? No. So, okay, so I'm also into Vedic astrology. All right, so I'm also into Vedic astrology. And now, let us uh, let's be clear, okay? Now, in astrology, uh, the the gods in the ancient times, a lot of the gods are linked to stars and planets, right? So, for example, right, when you talk about the Roman gods, Jupiter, right? Jupiter is a planet; it's the biggest planet in our solar system. It also happens to be the godhead or the ruler of gods in the Roman pantheon of gods. You have Mars. Mars is a planet, you know Mars as a planet, but at the same time, Mars is the god of war or to the Romans. And you have Venus. Venus is a planet and similarly is a goddess to the Romans. All right. So similarly, similar exists for the Hindus in Vedic astrology and so on and so forth. Now, just to be clear, the planets have energy and energy as a planet, as a physical celestial body in space in the solar system. It has its energies, right? Now, on the other hand, you also have deities that are linked to planets or by the name or by the association linked to planets, but they exist separate from the planets. Okay, this is just to be clear. So you have Venus, the planet, and you have the goddess Venus. Venus is a goddess. Yes, you have Jupiter. Jupiter is a real god, but nobody prays to Jupiter anymore because it's during common times. You know, he's the king of gods, so to speak. All right. So I hope I answered your question. And one is asking, are there divine elementals or nature spirits? Now, there are elementals and nature spirits, but they are not necessarily divine, right? So, so you have nature spirits, and some of them they can be on the other side, you know, and some of them can be divine. Some of them can come from heaven. So those who are come from heaven, they are divine, but some don't. All right. So there is no black or white answer to this. Okay. Xiaofan is asking, is all divine from different religions are friends of each other? Very good question. So we go back to the talk on heaven, right? Whereby I shared, you know, in heaven all the divines are there, different religions, right? And come from the same place. It's like coming from a hometown. And heaven is all good. So they're all friends with each other. Yes, the answer is yes. Different religions, right? Stefan, if you missed the talk on heaven, you can go to YouTube. Stefan is asking, is Allah God Omitofor same God but with different appearance? Oh, very good question, but this tonight's talk is not on God, so I will skip. Abby's asking, are some humans on earth now original from heaven, divine being, and punished to earth? That's a very good that's a very good question. So it is possible. It is possible. Yet the scenario may not always be punishment. Now imagine this, you like Guan Yin. Okay, those of you who know the story of Guan Yin, goddess of mercy. So goddess of mercy used to be a real person, right? So she did a lot of good deeds. She died and then she became a deity, and progressively she reached, she became a divine. And in Buddhism, we call her Bodhisattva or Busa in Chinese. So Bodhisattva is just one round away from Buddhahood, or to some, Guan Yin is already a Buddha. All right. So now, can you imagine you are like Guan Yin or any Buddha or any divine of high level? Your cultivation of love and compassion is so high that you would want to be reborn on earth to help save people, right? So I just want to clear things. So we are aware of the presence of such people whereby in their past lives, mind you, their past lives used to be very illustrious and they are like divine beings, right? But they have come to earth and hoping to do good deeds. Whether they make it or not, it is up to the person. Right now, there are, of course, now in the modern world, there are a lot of pitfalls. So, just to share, so we have met some of these people, and some of these people, we know they in the past life, you know, they are very illustrious, they are divine, right? But in this life, they are nobody. They fail their tests, and there are some who are trying to do good, but there are not many, right? So it's so actually we are aware that there are people who have very good past lives, and you know, because who they were, they become divine, and yet they choose to come down to earth. But whether or not are they able to do good deeds is completely independent of, I would say, almost completely independent of who they were in their past lives, because we still have the trials in this world today, right? So the answer to Evan's question is yes, but don't just think about punishment. All right. So Evan asked, what does divine being feed on? Is it light? Very good question. Does divine being need to feed? Now think about this. You know, there are people on earth that do not need to eat, do not even need to drink. And those are people, of course, with special powers, or you know, they are usually people who meditate a lot. I know one person, you know, I've met him in person. He can do water fasting. He don't even eat, right? He can do water fasting 30 days, 40 days at one go without eating. He just drink water. All right. To scientists, that is almost impossible because supposedly you will die after, you know, after 1 or 2 weeks without food, right? But this guy just drinks water. Now, if people can go without food, what makes you think that you might need to feed? They don't need to feed, right? They don't have a physical body, so they don't need the energy. Now, the reason why the bad guys, the evil spirits, take energy is because they are greedy. They want more and more. They are not happy with what they have, right? And they don't understand that the way to more and more power is actually by doing good. So if we were to understand energy, I just to share with you all. Have you felt the energy of love? Right? The energy of love is flowing. It's a spring that gushes forth, a never-ending spring. Right? So if you as a person can cultivate love, and if you are meditated, you will feel that you have this energy that keeps on coming from your heart, right? And it will be the same for the divine beings, and that is why they focus on cultivating values and light, on becoming a better and better spirits, better and better divine being, you know, energy being. Because the quality of being good itself will give you more and more energy. Whereas the dark side, they are about taking energy because they don't know and they don't understand. And they have been, you know, too stuck in their ways of just taking energy from others. It is like a human world. The criminals keep on wanting to steal, to con people, to take money, right? They don't get it. They know people can work for money, but they choose to take money from people who work, right? So it's a matter of choice, or they just want the easy way out. Why? Again, it's their values. They're lazy and they're greedy. All right. So, next question. Can you say divine being are not afraid of any entity except God? Why should one be afraid of God? Now, God is the highest of good values, is of the highest love. Why should you be afraid of God? No, the divine are not afraid of anything. Okay? So God does not have to be feared. All right. But we will have another talk on God when the time is right. Okay, Stefan is asking, how do you know what kind of values they have? So that's a very good question. So I was pointing out to people like if you're a normal person and you encounter let's say you have a friend and a friend say, oh, I'm praying to this new deity. This new deity, oh, very good. This new deity, I pray only, then I get strike lottery. I get easy money. And I can have whatever I want. I pray only, and then girls will fall for me, for example. Straight away, you will be able to have a very quick analysis. Are these of good values? Does it make the person lazy and greedy? Lazy and greedy from the other side. Power, for example. Power. Power. Power is power, lust. They're all very similar. It's all about greed, wanting more and more. But when you talk about true spirituality, the divine, they talk about letting go, forgiving, about loving, love thy neighbor, love your friend, love your enemy, right? Do they talk about money? Do you hear Jesus talk about money? Do you hear Guan Yin talk about money? Do you read Buddha text? Buddha talk about money? Buddha talk about letting go. Buddha talk about letting go of everything. Buddha left his home. He was a prince. No riches, left his family even because he wanted to solve the problem of suffering. Right? So you can find out. So find out about the stories behind the deity, right? Find out about how the people pray. Now, because the people who pray gives a very heavy clue, because sometimes the stories will tell a very good picture. But if you notice that the people are praying for money and it's very materialistic, power crazy. Now, even though the story of the deity is good, you know, they may no longer be praying to the good deity. It may be the good deity is gone because the deity does not want to be associated with dark values, right? And an evil spirit has come in and is influencing the people to pray that way. All right. So um, one of the main message I hope to get across is look out for the values, right? The people who practice, the people who pray, the leader of the people who pray, right? Friends or whatever. All right. So pay attention to values. So good values are not again for Stefan, you know, good values, love. Now, for example, forgiveness. If there's any deity that does not forgive, if there's any deity that is vengeful, all right, that takes revenge. If you pray to me, let's say, there are quite a lot of deities that are like that. If you pray to me and for something and I give you, let's say you ask for something and I grant your wish, you want your son to go to university or whatever, you want your wife to be cured, and by a miracle your wife is cured, you know. So that proves that the deity has power, but are they of good values? Now there are some deities that are very famous for punishment and for vengeance. If you pray, you get what you want, and you don't make offerings, right? When you don't make offerings, that is usually a sign that they are not divine. All right, they are usually a sign that they are not divine. If they require payment and you don't pay, there will be revenge. So I know, like in, there are some people who pray to deities that are like that, right? They ask for money, and then usually they get money easily, and they don't go back to the shrine to pray, and then bad luck befalls them. Car accident, they go bankrupt, all kinds of things we've encountered, right, over the years. Okay, so these are usually non-divine, these are usually on the dark side. Okay. So Stefan is asking, what about fallen angels? They are more dangerous than normal demons because they know heaven so well as they choose to bad values. Yeah, of course. So they are the bad guys. So they are not divine, right? So they are formally divine, but they chose to go to the dark. And Stefan is asking, yeah, spiritual beings. How can you know if they are good or bad? So again, you have to see what are the stories that follow these spirit beings. I'm saying, for example, your friend asks you to pray to this deity, and if this deity is famous for granting money, quick money, then that is not divine. I can guarantee you that is not divine. I can guarantee you, because the deity is not empowering you, which is a good thing. The deity is encouraging you to be greedy, to be lazy. You understand? All right, so you have to understand the stories. Otherwise, if you are talking about understanding energy, right? So you need to be trained in energy. All right. Now the way that we do it, Cordelia and I, our disciples, and those who are training under community, you have to be able to read energy. You have to be able to sense subtle energies to tell whether is this a good or bad spirit. And it requires training. And the most basic training, all right, is you need to be familiar with the quality of light. Because divine are of light, you need to be most familiar with the quality of light. And the second is the training of values. You need to be of good value so that you can sense the energies of love. The energies, right? Good values have energies and they have a different sensation. The basic training is of light and of values. For light, you can practice by light meditation or unity qigong, right? To enhance your life. Values, you have to become a good person. That is the whole point about being spiritual, about becoming a better person with better values. The training on this, if you want to join us under the Infinity program, if you want to do the kind of work that we do, like work to help the world against dark invisible forces, you have to have these good values in life. Right? I'm not saying we are divine. We understand the qualities of divine, of heaven, association. It's very, it's pretty much like this. All right. So you need the training. So if you are to be of good values, you must be able to boost or reduce your anger, your unforgiveness. Right. So that's just an example. So the training, all right, if you want to be like us, how to be able to tell in terms of sensing spirit, whether it's good or bad, it's like that. Otherwise, you will know by the values. If you know that there's a spirit is trying to harm you, it's trying to cause chaos in your family, in your life, then definitely it's an evil spirit. It's not divine. All right. So Edwin is asking the practice of right side of the, good values, good rules, ethics, letting go, reduce suffering, also the path of man's future. Yes, right? So on the light side, on the good side, it's all about becoming good values and all this and letting go, reducing suffering. Yes, so Edwin, you're correct. All right, so pretty much I managed to answer all your questions. Does any one of you have any other question? We overshot the time a little bit, much as the last session. Any more questions? All right. So if you all don't have any questions, thank you very much for joining me. If you feel that you've benefited, feel free to make a donation. If you cannot afford a donation, that is all right too. Right, so I will be updating the groups on the topic for next month and the date. Right, and this session that is being recorded, I will upload it in February next month. Thank you for joining me. Have a good day. Good night.